Now Fumi was a hideous, repulsive, isolated outcast who squandered all of his meaningless existence playing video games and lost his violent parents to insanity at the age of 6. After betting the final bit of his household savings, he began spending the remainder of his pointless existence reading fan fiction at the library when a peculiar book fell off the shelves. After opening the book, however, he was transported to an alternate realm where a group of strange magicians had attempted to summon him. Along with him, he saw 3 other grotesque rejects: Ren, the pathetic sword hero, Motoyasu, the brainless spear hero, and Itsuki, the inept bow hero. After the sorcerers introduced them before the monarch, he informed them that they were summoned to rescue the realm from the waves, hordes of beasts that would annihilate the world if the 4 cardinal champions didn't halt them. So to assist them on their mission, the king assembled the mightiest fighters to join their groups, but not a single one of them joined Fumi's party. Realizing that he would perish immediately without the ability to strike enemies with his shield, the attractive, humble girl Mine offered to join Fumi's party. However, because he only had one party companion, the monarch gave him more coins than the other champions, and all of them began their expedition. After eliminating all the slimes in the meadow, he began absorbing all of their remains, allowing his shield to advance. But before ending the day, Mine took him back to the armorer, where he attempted to wield a blade, but his sacred armament blocked him from using it. So instead, Mine told him to purchase some cheap protection since his shield would guard him, while she bought the priciest gear in the store and vowed to repay him however he wished. After she made his simp heart shatter, he took her to the fanciest diner in the city, where she urged him to sip PG grape beverage with her and requested to spend the evening with him. However, Fumi's foolish self blew the chance and apologized because he only had a single bed in his chamber, so he left to sleep, realizing that he only had 200 silver coins left, but chose to conceal them beneath his shield and lay down, thrilled for the rest of his days in a new realm. But when he awoke the following dawn, he noticed that all of his items were gone, and as he attempted to wake Mine, a swarm of sentries surrounded him and dragged him in front of the king with their spears aimed at him. Before his eyes, Mine began hiding behind the spear hero, alleging that Fumi had pinned her down and started creating drama with her before she could flee to Motoyasu's chamber. As Fumi tried denying any of that occurring, he realized that Motoyasu was the thief wearing his chainmail gear. However, Motoyasu said that Mine had given him the equipment as a gift the night before, and told Fumi that he deserved to have his throat sliced. The only thought that crossed Fumi's mind was why Mine would ever blame him, so while no one else noticed, she grinned at his face and taunted him, making him realize that she had been pretending all along just to rob all his wealth. Furious at how severely she wrecked his life and believing they had all schemed his collapse just because he's the feeble, worthless shield hero, he screamed for them to send him back to his world. However, the king rejected his requests, as summoning new heroes is only possible after all 4 current heroes are killed, so his only option would be to defeat all of the oncoming waves. But while all of them were disgusted at the idea of working with him, Fumi promised to defeat all of the waves on his own and threw all the guards off him, saying that he'll never need their help. Before leaving, he threw all his remaining money at Mine's gold-digging ass, and when Motoyasu tried stopping him, Fumi told him that he was too weak to waste time and left, as a mysterious spy watched over him. With that, all of his money, respect, and trust was gone. Losing it all while traveling around town, all citizens began avoiding him, and even the blacksmith was about to knock him out for what he did to the girl. But after seeing the glare in his eyes, he decided to let go and instead offered him a robe, asking to pay him back whenever he could. All alone in the field, Fumi began destroying all the slimes, punching them one by one, until he finally gathered a pile of their skin and reached level 2. While traveling back through the town to meet the trader, the merchant tried scamming him by paying only 1 copper coin for his 20 slime skins. However, Fumi knew he was selling them to much more for other adventurers, so he grabbed his face and threatened to give him a new face if he wouldn't buy them for the fair market value. So the merchant agreed to pay him fairly, and while the blacksmith was back at his shop, he saw the 5 copper coins Fumi promised. For countless nights he began sleeping in the middle of the field and eventually found expensive herbs, and after absorbing them, he unlocked a new leaf shield to use. And with his new shield, he was able to enhance the quality of the herbs. So when he met a pharmacist at night, he was able to sell them for a high price. With everything he had, he would buy the cheapest food he could afford. But one day, 3 worthless morons ambushed him in the alley, commanding him to give them his money. However, Fumi turned around and shoved a slime onto one of them while blocking the knife of the other bandit with his shield. shield. All three of them began running away, but even after they went away, Fumi realized he was powerless, as he can't ever get stronger without killing monsters, and he can't ever kill monsters with just his shield. Seeing his frustration, Dr. Eggman's scamming cousin told Fumi that he had a very interesting proposal for him and told Fumi to follow him only if he was interested. As they walked back to his hideout, the merchant told him that he was here to offer him some slaves, telling him that slaves would never lie or betray their masters because of the curse placed on them. They will always obey their owner's commands. And while he looked through all of them, he saw a little demi-human girl who looked sick inside. The worthless slave trader told him that she was the cheapest slave he had, as she was both physically and mentally ill because her previous owner loved torture. Because she would likely die soon, the slave trader was willing to sell her for 30 silver coins. So Fumi decided she was going to be the one he buys. Inside the slave merchant's room, he drew a sigil across her chest, and Fumi saw her status appearing as part of his party. Before leaving, Fumi asked for her name, screaming at her to stop her disgusting mouth from coughing. So she told him that her name was Raftalia, and he forcefully grabbed her away. As he walked away, the trader was shocked that Fumi really chose her, as if it was destined by fate to happen. Once again, inside the blacksmith's shop, Fumi gave him 6 silvers for a weapon that she could use and told her to draw her knife at the slime hiding under him. But when she was too scared to react, he began activating her curse to force her into submission. So she rushed forward to stab the slime, but was too weak to deal any damage still. Fumi screamed at her to try harder, and when she rushed forward this time, she blew the slime up, gaining XP. As she sat on the floor, he told her that she will become his sword as he protected her and left the blacksmith to go to a food place. When he went inside, he asked for the cheapest food he had and asked for Raftalia to get the same food the kid behind her is eating. When she wondered why he would get something for her, he told her that it looked like she wanted it. And when she got the food, her eyes lit up, wondering if she could really eat something so nice. Tears began flowing through her eyes as she ate, but Fumi realized that he really still can't taste anything. Later that day, they began farming the slimes once again. And once they were done, Fumi's shield began leveling up. At the same time, Raftalia wondered who he was, so he told her that he was the shield hero. After hearing those words, she remembered her family asking her who her favorite hero was, and when she said it was the shield hero, they were glad, as he was the only one who ever treated demi-humans kindly. When she asked for his name, he told her that it was Fumi and handed her medicine to cure her sickness away, but it was more disgusting than his face. As he kept watching throughout the night, Raftalia dreamed about the day her parents tried protecting her from a 3-headed dog and threw her into the ocean as they were devoured. Waking up screaming for her parents, Fumi tried holding her closely to calm her down. The following morning, the pharmacist told Fumi that he'd make way more money selling medicine instead of herbs, so Fumi asked if he could borrow some of his tools. Outside the shop, Raftalia was watching a bunch of kids playing with a ball, but even though she pretended like she'd never want one, seeing her tail wag made him realize she was lying, so he decided to buy her one of them. Before the night approached, he tried buying a room, but when the merchant was hesitant, he threatened to make his face even uglier than it already was. As days passed, Fumi kept taking care of Raftalia and giving her medicine, along with selling everything else that remained. Slowly, they began diving deeper into the forest. But when a rabbit appeared, Fumi tried making Raftalia stab the rabbit. However, she didn't want to make the rabbit bleed, and as her curse activated, Fumi told her that he wouldn't be able to keep taking care of her if she was unable to attack. After all, the waves are going to destroy this world. But when she heard that he was going to defeat the waves, her resolve strengthened, and she began charging towards the rabbit, ending it in that instant. She told him that she wouldn't be weak and that she'd do anything to stay by his side. That evening, when they returned to the weapons shop, Fumi decided to buy her a bigger sword to prepare her for tougher quests. So the smith showed them a short iron sword, telling them that it was a perfect fit for her. Realizing he was fast returning to being a brokey, Fumi decided to ask if there was a nearby village they could earn some quick cash. Feeling sorry for his broke ugly ass face, the smith directed them to the nearest village, saying that they would find some quick and illegal jobs. When they arrived in the village, Fumi decided to sell his rabbit skin to a merchant and asked for directions to the nearest gold mine. The man told them that there was a coal pit nearby and said that he could make some good money from selling the ores inside. Inside a barn, Fumi decided to check his stats on the system. Realizing his shield had acquired exclusive effect and skills, he decided to reveal this new ability. At once, his shield transformed into a rope shield. Looking to discover its full abilities, he cast an airstrike shield before before him and was surprised even at the sight of it. However, when Raphtalia appeared before him, he pretended like he was not impressed and suggested that they leave immediately. As they headed down the tunnel, Raphtalia wondered just what she could call him. However, Fumi did not give two shits about it and told her to call him whatever she wants. When they were deep inside the cave, Fumi began hammering the crystals. When he was done, he noticed that Raphtalia was shivering in fear and watched as a two-headed monster appeared before their eyes. Raphtalia realized that this monster looked exactly like the three-headed beast that had isekai'd her parents. And as the memories continued flashing across her mind, she was totally paralyzed in fear. As the beasts hurried to devour her, Fumi narrowly rescued her and dived into the water. As he tried climbing up the mountain, Raphtalia told him that a similar monster had eliminated her family, and Fumi realized that this was why she cried in her sleep every night. Before long, the beast appeared before them, and Fumi realized that it was a level 15 monster. He told Raphtalia that this was her chance to avenge her parents. If they succeeded in upgrading their EXP, he said that they would be saving several other kids from losing their parents like she did. After letting out those words, he charged at the monster, and as he blocked one with his shield, the second bit into his shoulder. Realizing he was about to meet his end, he told her to kill the beast immediately, but she was too chicken to even move. He tried commanding her, but even still, she was too afraid to stand. Realizing this was hopeless, he told her to run away before she was devoured, and said that she would finally be free once he was dead. However, she remembered how her parents were devoured before her eyes, and how Fumi had saved her and had been a good guy from the very start. Afraid of wandering alone for the rest of her life, she charged forward and stabbed one on the head, but was flung aside with the beast turning its attention on her. Fumi cast a shield to protect her, and utilizing the opportunity, she stabbed it deep inside the heart, killing it in that instant. At that moment, their EXP increased, and Raphtalia rushed to hold him, happy to see him alive. As she cried in his arms, Fumi realized that she had chosen to call him by his name. After meeting their powers on a monster lion, as Motoyasu cast the lightning spear to slay it, with all the monsters destroyed, the skies cleared up in an instant. Having been away from the real battle, Motoyasu thought the waves were a mere cakewalk after all, and Itsuki said that he was looking forward to the next one. As he let out those words, the knights arrived. Seeing the slain beasts, the commander said that they had done a great job and told them that the king would reward them at the castle. Inside the village, everyone gathered to thank Fumi for saving them from total elimination. However, Fumi thought they could go screw themselves. The villagers tried telling him that he would always be their local hero, but he told them to fight off. After they left, Raphtalia became sad, wishing her parents had been rescued the same way they managed to save this village from annihilation. As she began to cry, Fumi tried calming her down. That night in the castle, as everyone celebrated their victory, Fumi thought he was in a hellhole and would surely not have come except for the cash reward the king had promised to give out to the heroes. As Raphtalia walked past Motoyasu, he tried to meet her, but Mind stopped him and began whispering some very evil suggestions. Raphtalia appeared before Fumi and tried persuading him to taste the food, but he told her that he would rather drink his own vomit before his eyes. He realized he had acquired a new ability, which luckily helped him to teleport with Raphtalia to the scene of the waves invasion. Just then, Raphtalia arrived with food, determined not to take no for an answer, and quickly gave him a taste of her cake. Seeing this, Motoyasu's envy began to grow, so he tossed his glove at Fumi and challenged him to a duel. With Mine having told him that Raphtalia was his slave, he said that he intends to free her from her slave contract, even though he was only hoping to see her switch over to his side. Fumi told him that it was perfectly legal to own a slave and began to leave anyway, but a knight stopped him and the king commanded him to accept the challenge. Realizing this mess turned south, Raphtalia tried telling them that she follows Fumi willingly, but a knight muffled her voice, and the foul king said that she has been brainwashed. Realizing he was about to lose his only companion, Fumi tried reclaiming her, but the knights drew their sword, determined to stop him. As Motoyasu appeared before him, he wondered if he would chicken out of the duel and run off, but Fumi threatened to destroy him that night. Before the duel, Fumi tried taking a weapon, but it electrocuted him and the system warned him not to take any unassigned weapons. As they faced off, Motoyasu told him to surrender before he wipes his ugly ass across the arena floor. However, Fumi thought actions speak louder than words and decided to activate a new shield, readying himself for the fight. With Motoyasu ready to destroy him, he began charging towards him and rammed his shield continually but could not even cause a scratch. Fumi told him that he was a sore loser and said that he has no chance at beating him, since he can't even pierce his shield. Looking to put in more effort, Motoyasu activated his Chaos Spear and began attacking with relentless onslaught until Fumi was exposed, allowing him to slit his arm. Determined to make it even, Fumi began running towards him and successfully punched him in the gut. As Motoyasu realized that a balloon was sucking on his meat, Fumi revealed the other balloons that were stuck to him. This was his secret weapon, and since he has no offensive attacks, he made good use of them to leverage his weakness. Angered to see him fighting back, Motoyasu thought of ending the duel with a powerful jab, but Fumi shielded it and knocked him away with his two-headed dog shield. Before he knew it, Fumi launched an airstrike shield at him and trapped him inside a shield prison. Inside the prison, Motoyasu realized that a few balloons were trapped with him. As he was unable to escape, all the people began to call Fumi a useless coward that was too useless to fight. So he decided to release him and told him to surrender, but Motoyasu told him that he would rather walk to China. Pleased with his response, Fumi told him that he would destroy his pretty face so he would never get laid for the rest of his life. However, just as he was about to begin the facial reconstruction, a mighty wind blew him away, and he realized that Mine had used her magic on him. Angered by her cheating, he thought of destroying her at that moment, but narrowly dodged Motoyasu's spear and successfully blocked all consequent attacks. As Motoyasu drew his lightning spear, he unleashed it straight at Fumi, successfully penetrating his shield and knocking him out. With Fumi weakened from the attack, Motoyasu declared himself the winner. However, as he began to leave, Fumi accused him of cheating and said that Mine had attacked him from behind, but everyone was silent in the arena. This made Fumi think he was hallucinating and soon began to wonder if everyone was staring dead in the eyes. Before his eyes, the king began to congratulate Motoyasu, and at that moment, Fumi realized that Mine was actually a princess. All this time, they had tried to destroy him just because the king intended to hook up his daughter with Motoyasu, and even the duel had been a total setup from the very start. He was angry that they had summoned him into their disgusting world and even still had decided to hate him for doing no wrong at all. This made him angrier, and he thought of destroying every damn person inside the arena. Just then, a minister said that Raphtalia would now be freed from her slave curse, and all the people wondered why Fumi's ugly face was summoned into their world anyway. Angered at his destiny, Fumi pounded the ground, and before his eyes, they revealed Raphtalia's crest and doused it with a potion that caused it to vanish. At that instant, the system revealed that his contract with her had been terminated. As Mine led her away, Fumi's anger grew tremendously, and he threw his shield far away, but it vanished and reappeared on his arm as he screamed his anger, saying that this entire world could rot in hell for all he cares. His curse series activated in that instant. At the same time, Raphtalia smacked Motoyasu, wondering why he had to stick his ugly nose where it did not belong. She told him that Fumi was a good master to her and that he only activated her curse when she was too afraid to fight. Mine thought she was being disrespectful to the love of her life and tried smacking some sense into her, but Itsuki and Ren arrived at that moment. As Ren demanded to know why Mine had cheated, Motoyasu wondered what the hell was going on. So Itsuki told him that he actually lost the duel, but Fumi had been attacked from behind. Even so, Mine would not admit what everyone already knew and said that they probably imagined it or something since no one from the crowd was backing them up. But Ren knew better and told her that they were all unwilling to speak up because they were afraid of the king. As Raphtalia approached Fumi, she tried telling him that she was still the same person as before, but he told her to get lost. She told him that she heard he tried to develop plot with the princess but believes that he was innocent as she tried to touch him. He smacked her away, telling her to leave since their contract was now broken. However, she could see deep into his heart and began telling him that she believes him and would remain by his side forever, just as she promised. As he grew angry, thinking he was hated because of his crappy shield, he tried ripping it away, but she stopped him. She told him that the shield was more powerful than he thought, and that it was the only reason they managed to save the village from total obliteration. Fumi told her that he was a bad guy and never intended to save the village, but Raphtalia knew better and decided to hold him. She told him that she could see into his heart, and even though he pretends to be bad, she knew that he was a good guy. She told him that she was his sword and would follow him to the ends of the earth. Hearing her words, Fumi realized that it was all he had ever wanted to hear, but then he realized that she had told him these exact words right before the waves arrived. However, he had been in a crap mood and had paid her no attention. She told him that she would stay with him forever, and before his eyes, eyes, he finally saw her true grown-up form, telling him that she was no longer the kid he remembers and asked to stay by his side for the rest of her life. As they held each other close, however, Motoyasu thought that Raphtalia was still under a spell and wondered just how he could break them up. But Itsuki told him that he was either blind or the greatest idiot he had ever seen. The following day, Raphtalia gave Fumi some leftover food from the castle kitchen. As he ate it, he realized that this was the first time he could ever taste food again. When Fumi was confused as to who she really was, she told him that her clan grow as quickly as they level up, and that this had been the reason why they were considered inhuman, because they grow 4 times as fast as a regular kid. As Fumi took a bite from the leftovers, he realized that he could taste food again, but Raphtalia told him to shut his ugly ass up. If only Fumi told Fumi, who can only communicate with girls he enslaves. Damn. That day in the castle, the king announced that Motoyasu would be paid 4,000 silver for fending off the waves and rewarded Itsuki and Ren with over 3,000 silvers. However, when it was Fumi's turn, he decided to pay him 500 silver, but before he could even take it, he said that he deserved no reward, having lost his duel to Motoyasu. At this point, Itsuki thought he was starting to overdo it and said that he would have won the duel fairly and squarely without any interference. Hoping to clear her name, Mine began saying that Motoyasu had won the duel fairly, but Itsuki was having none of her nonsense and called her a disgusting cheater. Ren told them that Fumi had saved the nearby village when the waves invaded and believed that he deserved to be rewarded even for that good deed. Realizing he had no other choice, the king commanded that Fumi be paid the least possible amount and told him to get his horrendous face out of the castle. As Fumi grew angry at his words, Raphtalia told him that they were better off leaving this hellhole anyway, so Fumi agreed, realizing it was probably true, and they began to leave together. That day, they decided to return to the slave merchant to activate a new slave contract on Raphtalia. When he was done, Fumi discovered that he had acquired a slave user's shield. As he noticed a few monster eggs, the merchant offered to sell one, telling him that it would make some good meat in the future. Fumi wondered what kind of. Monsters would make good meat, so Raphtalia reminded him that they were the same birds they had seen in the city, pulling carriages around the town like horses. Thinking it might come in handy, Fumi decided to buy one. When they arrived in a medicine store, the owner gave Fumi a book of herb recipes, calling it a gift for saving the nearby village. However, Fumi realized that he could not read the words, because apparently there was no Google Translator in this realm. Afterwards, they visited a magic shop, and the old woman gave them a grimoire, saying that it was a gift for rescuing her grandchild at the village. She told him that if he successfully studied the book, he would learn as many spells as he desires that would be useful in combat. That evening, Fumi realized that he really needs a Google Translator, because even the grimoire was starting to look like some ancient Greek or something. Raphtalia suggested that they study the language together, and since there was still a month before another wave's invasion, Fumi agreed, hoping to utilize every moment. Fumi suggested they spend the night at the village, and Raphtalia thought it was the best news she'd heard all day. The following morning in the village, Fumi and Raphtalia watched as the dragon egg hatched. Immediately, the bird flew on top of Fumi, taking him for her parent, and as the days passed, he took on that role like a champ and basically watched the bird increase in size within a few days. By the end of the week, the bird had doubled in size, and Fumi thought his growth boost skill probably helped, so he decided to name her Philo. At that moment, they discovered that another hero had appeared in the village. Inside the square, Mine began telling the villagers that the king had declared Motoyasu the new lord of the village, and said that in their efforts to rebuild the place, they would begin taxing everyone for their entry and exit into the village. The villagers thought this was the worst possible announcement they could hope for, and a man said that they could barely have 2 meals a day. However, Fumi went on to ask Mine, "Are you delusional? Do you suffer from a mental illness?" He said that the taxes were absurd, and that there was no possible way the villagers could afford it. As the villagers began to show their support, Mine commanded her soldiers to draw their spears. Before they could attack, a mysterious group appeared before her and handed her a scroll. Angered by the words inside, she decided to challenge Fumi to a race, saying that the winner would take charge of the village. Afraid of losing their village, the villagers begged Fumi to accept the challenge, but he thought it was another trap from Mine. When the villagers realized that Philo was ready to take on the challenge, they started begging once more, promising to reward him for his victory. As he prepared for the race, Motoyasu started bragging about his dragon, calling it the monster version of Usain Bolt, but Philo grew furious and kicked him away. As he landed on a haystack, he realized that she narrowly missed his plot developing tool, and Mine was afraid that his plot-making days might be over forever. As the race began, both heroes took off immediately, and Philo gave Motoyasu some distance, blowing dust into his face. However, Mine's soldier cast a spell and created a hole in the ground. As Fumi was too late to notice, the bird slipped, allowing Motoyasu to take the lead. However, this only made Philo more determined, and she soon regained the lead. Even so, Mine would not accept defeat, so her soldier cast a new spell to slow her down, allowing Motoyasu to take the lead once more. But Philo was bent on winning and breezed past his dragon, even blowing dust on the princess. Desperate for victory, the soldier cast another spell to increase Motoyasu's speed, but Philo was no quitter. As Motoyasu moved into his way, Fumi discovered the holes before him, so using his airstrike shield, they jumped over the hole and continued charging towards the finish lane. Raphtalia and the villagers tried showing support, and even Mine was afraid that this race might go south. As the blood rushed from the adrenaline, Philo managed to win the race. With the villagers happy about the victory, Philo suddenly doubled in size, leaving even Fumi in shock at the sight of this. Mine thought she could use it to her advantage and began to accuse Fumi of cheating, but he called her the cheater. When she tried to deny it, the mysterious group appeared again, and the leader said that they had sensed a strange magic around the race course. Mine tried saying that Fumi was the magic user, but the leader told her that Fumi uses healing and support magic, and that Motoyasu was actually the cheater. Having no other lies to tell, Mine decided to accept defeat, saying that they would be returning to the castle immediately. Hoping to regain some self-esteem, Motoyasu told Fumi that he allowed him to win on purpose, but Fumi called him a useless moron and told him to give his life a purpose. That evening, the villagers gathered to thank Fumi for winning the race and saving the village. But Fumi told them that he has no interest in their worthless appreciation and demanded that they hand over his compensation immediately. The village chief told him that they had started saving up to reward him, but Fumi told him that he didn't want their funds because they needed everything they could gather in restoring their town. As he began to consider what else he could request for, Philo pointed at a wagon, selecting it as their prize. So that evening, they began riding away on the wagon. When Raphtalia became ill from all the motion, she hurried out to throw up. That night, Fumi decided to lay her by the fire, hoping that she would feel better in the morning. As he looked at the travel pass the village chief had given him, he remembered that he told him they would be allowed to move across the nation without paying a cent. So he began to consider if they could begin a part-time delivery business. Just then, Philo decided to snuggle up with him, but when he woke up the following morning, he found a small girl by his side. As he backed away immediately, he wondered who she was, but she told him that she was starving. That morning when they arrived at the weapons store, the smith wondered just how many spouses Fumi intends to have in his harem. When Philo noticed the cuisine, she told them that she was starving, so the smith asked her to take a bite. At that instant, Philo transformed into the bird and devoured everything in one gulp. After her meal, Raphtalia began telling the smith that the slave broker had told them about Philo's race, and had said that a few of the birds often hatched as the ruler or queen of their flock, and that they often have the skill to take on a humanoid shape. On top of that, they needed a unique crest before they could be trained, but when they tried to give Philo the crest in hopes of forming a new pact with Fumi, she had fiercely resisted before eventually accepting. When the smith demanded to know what they really needed from him, Fumi told him to sell them a few outfits. He said that every time Philo transformed into a bird, her clothing completely tore off. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before he became bankrupt all over again, because with every new outfit he bought, he was losing money twice as fast. He asked the smith for a special kind of garment that would be a perfect match for shape-shifting beings, but he told them to visit a tailor because he was most definitely not one. When they arrived at the tailor shop, Fumi told the tailor that they wished to make Philo a garment that would not tear apart whenever she transforms. The tailor told them that they would need enchanted threads to sew morphing clothing for her, and said that the fabric would be made out of Philo's own mana, because it was the only way to create a solid connection with the material. However, since they had no enchanted threads, they decided to visit the magic store, but the owner told them that she had run out of magic gemstones. She told them that the stones were rare to come by, but promised to locate them within a few days. That day, as they began exploring the village, hoping to earn some quick cash from running errands, they came across a villager, and Raphtalia thought it might be their fortunate day after all. The man told her that he was heading for the village so he could help his mother with a special remedy. Realizing his prayers just got answered, Fumi offered to give him a ride for 1 silver. However, the man told them that he was worse than broke, so Fumi told him that he could repay him with some food instead. Hoping to arrive faster, they decided to ditch the wagon, and Philo took off at once. As they began approaching the gate, the guard asked for their toll, but Fumi threw his pass at him and called himself a VIP. After arriving inside the village, Fumi offered to give the ill woman her potion and told the man to go count the stars or something. When the man was gone, he enhanced the power of the potion and gave her the drink. At that instant, her spirit revived, and she got up like she was never ill. When the man returned into the room, he was stunned to find his mother cured, and she told him that she was livelier than a horse. By the time Fumi was ready to leave, the man decided to ask him what sort of magic incantation he cast in her drink, but Fumi had no time for idling and told him to settle up his end of the bargain, so the man gave him food that was worth about the same amount as agreed. As Fumi rode away, he thought he might become a millionaire soon, realizing he could begin charging broke travelers for their food and eventually sell them for cash. So, as the days passed, he continued with this strategy and tried to study the grimoire every night. A few days later, as he began transporting a new merchant, the man told him that he had grown popular around the villages, as they had begun calling him their savior for treating ill people with his recovery skill. At that moment, they realized that several bandits were standing in their path, and the leader told them that they intended to rob the trader inside. Knowing Fumi would put up a resistance, the bandits decided to present their rank-enhanced guardian that was sure to take on any challenge. Fumi thought he would be a fierce opponent and summoned his shield for the skirmish. However, Raphtalia decided to step in and cast an illusion spell that made her unseen. So as Philo cast a whirlwind at the bandits, she finished them off in a flash. With the bandits all tied up, the leader began revealing that another wanderer had tipped them off about the trader and had said that they would earn $1 million from looting him. When Fumi wondered just what they should do with these lowlifes, the merchant proposed that they hand them over to the regional guards. However, the bandits thought they would easily walk free, and the leader told Fumi that everyone would think he was actually the villain, as the castle had done a great job of labeling him the most worthless hero in the realm. Realizing he wouldn't be coming out on top, Fumi threatened to eliminate them all and told Philo to ready her stomach. Afraid of meeting their demise, they began to plead for their lives. So Fumi agreed to spare them in trade for all of their belongings. That evening, the bandits began to hand over their plunder, and Raphtalia thought they had become robbers themselves. However, the merchant told her that it was a flawless exchange and decided to make Fumi his motivational champion. Even so, Fumi would not be swayed by his remarks and demanded a bonus payment from the merchant. The man told him that he was willing to share his wisdom and contacts with him and said that it would be worth more than gold and silver. That night, the man began showing him how to forge gems and energize them with power. Along the way, Fumi managed to pick up a few incantations, and within a few days, he was able to forge jewels on his own. By the end of the week, he had found a position in the trader networks. With this new status, he was able to learn every bit of information that went across the towns, and discovered that Motoyasu had saved a dying village by uncovering a mythical plant that grows even during drought. However, he'd always known that Motoyasu was basically too pathetic to figure anything out on his own, and knew for sure that mine must have led him to it. On the other hand, he learned that Ren had journeyed through the southeast seeking to defeat new creatures and eager to grow tougher. However, no one truly knew for sure where Itsuki had gone. For all he knew, Itsuki may have disappeared into a labyrinth on a risky hunt to find riches, or may have joined the forces of another kingdom. With this new intel, Fumi thought the merchant had definitely repaid him with something genuinely beyond gold. On top of that, the merchant had offered him a farewell gift of a large share of his belongings. When Fumi showed the deed to a mining headman, he told him that he has hit a gold mine and offered to supply him any gemstone he wants. Fumi told him that he wants the enchanted thread crystals so that he could at least make Philo a proper outfit. So the following day, they began heading to the site, having received directions from the chief. Before long, they arrived at the old site. As they entered the cave, Fumi told them that the cavern had been abandoned since beasts claimed it for their den. When they reached the end of the cave, they found an unfilled chest and wondered what may have been stored inside. As Philo directed them towards a new tunnel, they began to head deeper in. But when Philo refused to come along, Fumi threatened to desert her forever. Soon, they discovered a creature's footprint, and the magic woman told them that it was was a deadly fiend. Reluctant to turn back, Fumi proposed that they press forward anyway, but at that instant his torch went out and they began to hear eerie whispers. The magic woman told them not to heed it and said that it was merely a lure to divert their focus. Instantly, she cast an anti-bind spell to shatter the illusion. As they encountered several bats before them, Philo cast a gust to blow them away. With all the bats gone, Fumi decided to absorb them into his shield and soon gained a new ability. As they went farther into the corridor, they finally stumbled upon the crystals, but realized that there was a new creature that had made this its territory. Fumi wondered just how they would gather the gems, anxious that the beast might annihilate them all, but Raphtalia and Philo suddenly launched at it. As Raphtalia lunged with her blade, it dodged and tossed her aside before avoiding Philo's kick, but the woman scorched it with her flame burst. Even so, it nearly slashed Fumi's face off, but as he managed to fend it off, Philo struck it in the head and dragged Fumi away before it released a massive lightning blast. Realizing he was nearly fried, Fumi pondered how they could slay the monster and soon noticed Raphtalia as she cast her illusion spell and attempted to sneak up on the fiend. However, it caught her footsteps and nearly ended her on the spot. Philo told Fumi that the monster was extremely alert to sound, so as it leaped toward them, Fumi used his new technique and told Philo to shriek into his shield. Instantly, she let out a dreadful cry that repelled the creature, and the woman cast another flame burst to weaken it, allowing Raphtalia to pierce it before Philo delivered the final strike. Realizing Raphtalia was injured, Fumi bandaged her wound, telling her to be cautious next time, with no other creature to hinder them. Now Fumi finally acquired the gemstone, so the following day, Philo began converting her mana into the magic threads, but had already become drained from all the labor. By the next day, now Fumi finally gave the dressmaker the magic threads for Philo's garments, and when they returned, they found Philo dazzling in her new attire. But now Fumi was only relieved that he no longer had to stretch his budget for her wardrobe. In an instant, she morphed into the bird, and now Fumi realized that he just dodged a one-way pass to the land of the penniless. A few days later, now Fumi and Raphtalia began heading to a nearby village to deliver enchanted potions, and now Fumi questioned why a village would require so many restorative elixirs at once. Before long, they sensed something was off with this place. When they arrived inside the village, they noticed that the vines had surrounded the entire area, so the village chief informed them that the trees were beginning to mutate into monsters and were starting to assault the residents, forcing them to flee their homes. It turned out to be the seed from the underworld, and even adventurers that attempted to reclaim the village couldn't surpass the monsters. Realizing the adventurers were still stuck in the village, now Fumi ordered Philo to save them promptly. Before long, she returned with the adventurers and questioned why the idiots had chosen to endanger themselves when they were entirely incapable of beating the monsters. Raphtalia chose to act like her mother and told her to take back her words, but Philo could not care less about her. After the villagers realized that the bird could speak, the chief asked if now Fumi was the renowned traveler they had heard about, but he denied it as he was hesitant to involve himself in their trouble. However, the chief could see through his deception and pleaded with him to restore the ill villagers with his healing powers. So he accepted as it rushed toward them like a raging bull, until the girls finally had enough. So they returned to the town with the beast as their trophy, but Raphtalia was let down that she wouldn't be presenting now Fumi any presents. As two men showed up before them, one said that the beast was a rare submission for the town ceremony, and given the opportunity, they agreed to trade it and were able to purchase now Fumi a special instrument for crafting emblems. Raphtalia told him that it was their unique method of thanking him for being a wonderful husband to them, so now Fumi proposed that they have a threesome sometime. A few days later, as they got ready to travel to another village, they encountered two wanderers. After serving them breakfast, the woman advised them to return to their city and said that the village was plagued by a dreadful illness. However, now Fumi viewed this as his chance to make some extra money and proceeded toward it regardless. When they reached the village, he informed an elderly man that he had come to sell them some curative potions. Instantly, the man recognized that he was the renowned traveler they had always heard about and rushed off to inform the others. Shortly, the village medic brought him into a room full of unwell people. So now Fumi gave one ailing man a potion, and everyone was astonished to see him recover. That night, now Fumi decided to bill the doctor 10 times his standard rate and said that the villagers would fall ill again if they didn't uncover the origin of their disease. The doctor explained that everyone had become sick after a dragon on the nearby mountain was killed, and that the stench of the dragon's decaying flesh had tainted the air, harming all life near the location. With no one strong enough to resist the toxin, they couldn't cremate the body and stop the plague. Thinking of the fortune he would earn from this, Naofumi accepted the mission and told them that he'd be billing them 50 times more than usual. Before long, they set out for the mountains. After noticing several creatures ahead, Naofumi thought it would be pointless if they tried to battle them all, so he cast a spell on Philo, making her charge through them and zip all the way to the mountain. When they stood before the dragon, Naofumi questioned just how they would tear it apart, but before their eyes, the dragon started returning to life, and Naofumi realized that all their schemes were wrecked. As they started fleeing, Philo leapt ahead and flew at the dragon, striking it with a punch. When it emitted poison fumes, Naofumi managed to shield it, but the smoke started to overcome Raphtalia. Hoping to slay it, Philo rushed at it and managed to dodge its blows. However, Naofumi thought they were safer backing off and tried calling Philo to retreat, but at that second, the dragon consumed her and swallowed her immediately. At the sight of this, Naofumi and Raphtalia thought they would never see her again. As the dragon released more fumes, Naofumi recalled his earliest memories with Philo and how he watched her shift form. At that instant, his rage started to rise, and his cursed form activated. Using his fury, the shield's strength began to build, but as he drew closer to the dragon, it slammed him into the dirt, and Raphtalia believed that he had met his end. However, he rose again, lifting the dragon's foot, and as his strength surged even further, Raphtalia tried to stop him but was hurled away. Naofumi unleashed a fierce light that shattered the ground and blew away the haze, then exposed his blazing shield. As the dragon lashed with its tail, he incinerated it. Recalling the anguish of his betrayal, his shield ignited even more fiercely, and he struck the dragon, ready to incinerate all of it. But at that moment, he heard Raphtalia's voice, and as his mind returned, he found her wounded and watched her collapse onto the ground. Eager to rescue her, he began casting his healing spell, but she stayed unconscious. Taking advantage of his diversion, the monster attacked him, but he was guarded by his shield. However, he attempted to extinguish the flames, realizing he could not protect Raphtalia and battle the dragon simultaneously. Just then, the monster started howling and abruptly collapsed. As he pondered what had just occurred, Raphtalia regained consciousness, but nearly blacked out again. She asked who defeated the dragon, but even Naofumi had no response. Before their eyes, Philo rolled out of its stomach and they were astonished to see her alive, but she told them that she was never deceased. She explained that while chewing through its abdomen, she had discovered a violet crystal, and Naofumi believed that it was the nucleus that energized the dragon. Realizing it would hold immense strength, Naofumi asked her where it was, but she revealed that it was already inside her gut. As Raphtalia started to appear extremely unwell, Naofumi recommended that they head back to the village right away, but she told him that they must incinerate the dragon's body before departing. That evening, after arriving in the village, the doctor offered to compensate Naofumi for eliminating the dragon, but he told him to use it for treating Raphtalia, because as her condition worsened, he realized that she was more valuable than all the gold coins in existence. The doctor informed him that Raphtalia was afflicted by a potent dragon hex, and that they lacked the means to cure her. So he presented the funds once again, telling him that it might be beneficial. As Naofumi visited Raphtalia, he pondered how she could recover from her sickness. At the same time, Philo chose to offer Naofumi another crystal she had found within the dragon, so he embedded it into his shield, hoping to unlock a fresh ability. However, when he recalled that his fury had placed Raphtalia in peril, he resolved to apologize to her, saying that they should never have confronted the dragon. But Raphtalia told him that she was accountable and blamed herself for being too feeble and worthless to battle. But Philo said that her assault had disrupted their plans. Attempting to lift the mood, Naofumi told them that they were stronger now than ever, and said that they would overcome their hardships together. When he attempted to leave, Raphtalia asked him to stay the night in her bed, saying that she wants to feel his long blade deep inside her sheath. But Naofumi was in no mindset for that and told her to spend the night reading scriptures. A few days later, Naofumi and his group began exterminating monsters. When he began feeling remorseful for letting Raphtalia participate in the skirmish, she told him that she enjoys flexing her biceps and mowing down the monsters like slicing weeds. That afternoon, as they trekked through the woods, Naofumi told Raphtalia that they must get back to the capital immediately so they could discover a remedy for her ailment. At that moment, they encountered a young girl on the far end of the forest. But when the birds sensed their presence, they flew off immediately. The girl noticed Naofumi and his companions and basically ignored him like he was completely unseen, but told Philo that she had always longed to meet her species and was thrilled that she could communicate. Raphtalia wondered if the girl was from the village, but Naofumi told her that she was probably the offspring of some aristocrat. After the girl introduced herself as Melty, Naofumi told Philo that he would be heading to town with Raphtalia and offered her a timeout. Happy to catch a break, Philo transformed back into a human, and the girl was delighted that she had made a companion. That evening in the village, Naofumi began healing the people with his restorative tonic. But later that night, as he dressed Raphtalia's injury, Philo told them that Melty was a wandering little girl who couldn't find her way back to the city after being separated from her guards. At that moment, the girl arrived, asking them to accompany her to the capital as she hoped to reunite with her relatives. But Naofumi, hesitant to comply, heard Melty tell him that she must get to the capital immediately for a critical mission, and swore to reward him with more treasure than he could carry. Naofumi thought he might as well turn into a billionaire from all the rewards, but was anxious that he might land in danger for hanging around with the noble's daughter. Philo told him that they couldn't abandon her, and Raphtalia said that aiding her was the honorable action, so Naofumi finally consented. The next morning, Naofumi and the girls eventually rode out of the village, but as they embarked on a new expedition, Raphtalia endured all of her agony. After successfully sneaking into the capital, Naofumi told Philo to accompany Melty to her residence and to return with all the riches she had pledged. Afterwards, they arrived at the cathedral, hoping to locate a remedy for Raphtalia's affliction. Naofumi observed that there was no emblem of his shield atop the church, and realized that everyone in the sanctuary likely despised him. Upon entering, the pontiff greeted him, saying that he had witnessed his duel with Motoyasu at the palace and regarded him as a skilled warrior. But Naofumi didn't give a damn about his admiration, and demanded their most potent sacred elixir that could cure any jinx. One cleric told him that nothing valuable comes at no cost, and that he must hand over a gold coin for it. Raphtalia thought it was too steep, and suggested they explore another option to heal her, but Naofumi told her that she was more precious to him than any gold and chose to purchase it. However, when he used his identify ability on the elixir, he realized that it was the lowest quality one in their stock and told them to go sip it themselves. So the Pope commanded them to bring the genuine vial and apologize for the confusion. Naofumi told him that he only cared about the authentic stuff and that he could keep his smelly apology, which was faker than his ex. After using his identify skill on a new bottle, he confirmed that it was the genuine article and began to depart. When they stepped outside the cathedral, they noticed a knight dashing toward them, yelling to get his attention, unwilling to involve himself with anyone in the capital. Naofumi and Raphtalia started dashing off, hoping to shake the man, and they ducked into an alley, aiming to keep Raphtalia protected. Naofumi proposed that they divide paths, and chose to lure the knight toward a separate route. After becoming drained from all the sprints, Naofumi attempted to rest, but Motoyasu came soaring with his lance, barely missing him. Naofumi wondered if he had finally gone insane, but Motoyasu told him that he had arrived to liberate another enslaved girl. As Naofumi deflected his spear, he told him to go find a purpose, stating that Raphtalia was never ending up in his bed. But Motoyasu explained that he had come to rescue someone else. With Naofumi puzzled, Motoyasu said that he had spotted a goddess in his team and had come to liberate her. Immediately after realizing that the girl was Philo, Motoyasu began declaring that he had never seen a lovelier angel before. But Naofumi thought he was a repulsive creep and told him to go get a life. Motoyasu claimed that he was smitten with her and had been thinking of building his own harem with her as his second bride. Naofumi noticed his groin guard and questioned how he planned to please his harem with his busted character development gear. Offended by the memory, Motoyasu decided to counter Philo's earlier attack and hurled his spear, which Naofumi blocked, demolishing a stall instantly. Unwilling to retreat, Motoyasu kept tossing his weapon, wrecking everything nearby. A few onlookers started yelling at him to activate a brain cell, but when others believed his strikes were flawless, they ignited a skirmish of their own. As Motoyasu began sprinting with his spear, the knight stood in his path, forcing him to halt, and Naofumi realized that the knight was the same guy he had been evading. The knight told Motoyasu to snap out of it, stating that this was no place for a clash. But Mine appeared and ordered her troops to encircle them instantly. Producing a royal decree, she demanded that Motoyasu and Naofumi commence a new match because she was a useless spoiled maniac who only lived to witness Naofumi in agony. However, Melty arrived just in time and declared that she wouldn't tolerate a brawl inside her city. At that moment, Naofumi discovered that she was Mine's sibling. Soon after, Raphtalia and Philo showed up, baffled by Motoyasu's complete descent into madness. Without delay, he attempted to charm Philo with his cringiest online pickup lines, vowing to construct her a castle and treat her like royalty. But Philo told him that hauling a wagon was all she'd ever hoped for. Even then, Motoyasu assumed she had also been manipulated by Naofumi and vowed to finish him off like he intended to do to the chubby, revolting bird that almost destroyed his legacy. Upon hearing his words, Philo became furious and morphed into the bird, ready to obliterate his storyline device once and for all. She told him that she loathed him and had waited eagerly to conclude what she had begun. With Motoyasu stunned by the truth that she was the bird, she kicked his crotch, definitely smashing it this round. Soon, Melty stepped forward and told Naofumi that she wished to have a confidential conversation with him, but he was already fed up with seeing their grotesque faces. That evening, upon reaching the blacksmith's shop, Naofumi demanded to know who she truly was. She explained that she was the second princess of the empire and was next in succession to the crown above her foolish sibling, Mine. As she attempted to plead for his assistance, Naofumi told her to spare her breath and said he could never put faith in anyone from the monarchy because they were all rotten vermin with horrid faces, so he told her to beat it. Just then, a knight informed Melty that the king was awaiting her, so she chose to leave. But Philo was heartbroken to lose her only youthful companion. As Melty was departing, she recalled that her mother, the queen, had dispatched her to the capital so she could defend Naofumi's reputation since the king had merely labeled him a reject. However, she was crushed that she couldn't deliver her message. Meanwhile, the rebel army that had toppled their corrupt lord had become even worse and had doubled the levies without caring for the citizens. Naofumi told Itsuki that his effort to bring justice to the town had only worsened things, and told Ren that the dragon he defeated had triggered a plague that wiped out several villagers because he didn't burn the corpse. He said he had cleaned up after them and stated that their carelessness had cost many lives. With no further wish to waste his saliva, he started walking away, and even when Itsuki told him that he didn't believe anything he said, he just brushed him off. That evening, as they were about to leave the blacksmith shop, the young warriors came before them. The leader told Naofumi that they had managed to collect all the gold he requested, so he handed over the item as promised, but told them to invest in superior weapons with the income they had made. As he admitted them into his crew, the system revealed all their attributes, but he warned that he'd expel them if they ratted him out. With the next wave only 24 hours away, he advised that they start crafting a game plan for the confrontation. By the next day, they were all prepped for the fight, and Naofumi had stocked up enough medicine to treat the wounded as he placed a custom bracelet on Raphtalia. He told her that it was imbued with a spell that would boost her mana production, so she told him she adores it. When Philo grew envious and demanded her own present, Naofumi placed a special hairpin on her, telling her that it would enhance her swiftness. As she became thrilled, she morphed into the bird, and Naofumi thought it looked flawless on her. Just then, the young warriors arrived, so Naofumi enlisted the unit for teleportation and told them that they would all disappear simultaneously when the waves commence. At that moment, the timer began ticking down, and they disappeared instantly. As they arrived in a different village, they realized that the waves had already invaded the area, but two knights defeated a monster before it could eliminate a local. As they began to believe the fight was over, a monster reptile appeared and attempted to devour them, but was knocked aside, and Raphtalia slashed it before Philo pummeled it with kicks, finishing it in that moment. Just then, they observed an elderly woman kicking and pummeling the creatures. When she was finished, she thanked Naofumi for preserving her life, and he recalled that he had revived her with his recovery potion. As she kicked another creature, she told them that she was an adventurer and said that destroying them was practically effortless. When Naofumi wondered how much longer they would need to continue battling, the chief knight advised that he locate a method to eliminate the waves before the entire village was wiped out. So the old woman told him that they would defend the village for the time being. As Naofumi and the girls began sprinting towards the portals, they noticed a phantom ship. At the same time, Itsuki and the girl eradicated the nearby beasts. When Naofumi demanded to know where the others were fighting, Itsuki told him that they were on the ghost vessel, so Philo instantly flew onto the ship and soared even higher so they would gain a better view of everyone. Before their sight, Ren slashed the skeleton captain, but it revived and resumed fighting. As Ren and Motoyasu backed into one another, Ren proposed they destroy the skull captain first, but Motoyasu told him that he'd rather take on the Kraken, as he believed it was the sole way to lure the Soul Eater, which was essentially behind the waves. Before they realized it, Naofumi appeared before them, but Motoyasu was unimpressed and told him to shout, disregarding his worthless face. Naofumi told them that the only route to halt the monsters from resurfacing was by stopping the waves. By reflex, he blocked the captain and shoved it off, stating that they were meant to combat as a team, not solo. Just then, the Kraken attacked him, but he managed to guard himself, telling them to stop worrying about nonsense. But as he uttered those words, Ren and Motoyasu began arguing again. As Naofumi examined the captain's stats, he pondered how he could draw out the Soul Eater without eliminating the zombie. At that point, he noticed the zombie's shadow and told Raphtalia to cast her illumination magic on it. So Raphtalia began invoking the spell, and as a radiant light unveiled the shadows, Naofumi told her to finish it, so she pierced it without hesitation. Instantly, a spectral flame soared into the sky, and Ren quickly pierced another shadow. As more spirit flames rose high above the ship, they soon recognized that they were encircled by the Soul Eaters. Before their vision, the spirits floated into the sky and merged into a dimensional Soul Eater. At the appearance of this, everyone questioned if they could genuinely defeat it. Instantly, Ren, Itsuki, and Motoyasu unleashed a devastating combo on the creature, but it remained untouched. Realizing they were doomed, Naofumi told Philo to cast her wind spell, so she managed to strike it with a cyclone. Even so, the Soul Eater stayed unaffected and began preparing an assault of its own. Fearing its attack would be fatal, Ren and Motoyasu began charging toward it, but Naofumi thought it was a dumb idea and shielded Raphtalia and Philo from the massive blast that shook the vessel. As it readied an even stronger explosion certain to obliterate them all, Philo triggered a new ability and began slamming it from side to side, redirecting its focus elsewhere. She caused it to completely miss its mark. At once, Raphtalia attempted to finish it, and Philo resumed pounding it, narrowly avoiding its jaws every time. Seeing that the beast's life was decreasing, Naofumi thought they might stand a chance at conquering it, but was scared that the town would be ruined before it ended. Desperate to destroy it, Naofumi told Raphtalia that he would activate his rage shield, hoping to eliminate it in a single blow. So she reminded him that she was his blade and said that she was prepared to accompany him to the very edges of the earth. At that moment, he summoned his fury shield, and the energy from the radiance began to engulf him. Inside his awareness, he realized that the dragon's spirit was residing in his shield, and as a maturity skill was triggered, his shield and armor evolved as he started to ignite with the dragon's fury. When the other champions noticed his newfound strength, they questioned if he had encountered the devil or some malevolent entity. Before they realized it, Philo was overtaken by a fierce wrath, and she struck down the beast with a kick, allowing Naofumi to incinerate it, determined to reduce it to cinders. At the sight of this, Mind began shouting that Naofumi was a savage creature who wasn't even worthy of being a champion, but Raphtalia called her a pointless face and questioned why the other heroes weren't lending him any assistance since he was battling for their entire realm. Just then, the Buccaneer and Kraken emerged behind Naofumi, but Ren defeated the pirate with his scarlet sword, and Itsuki unleashed his lightning shot at the Kraken. Realizing their only chance at overcoming the beast was by collaborating, Motoyasu finally agreed to contribute, and Naofumi leapt away from the creature, aiming to exploit the gap. They started assaulting the Eater together, and Motoyasu pierced it with his lance. Even so, it still stood and was virtually immortal at this stage. Meanwhile, in Naofumi's awareness, he kept wrestling with his fury, but as Raphtalia appeared beside him and told him that she had faith in him, the rage disappeared. At that moment, he remembered that he had vowed to shield her and Philo always, and believed that the rage shield was doing them more damage than benefit. Right then, he unlocked a fresh ability and confined the creature inside a shield confinement. When it attempted to escape from the prison, he caused metal spikes to pierce it and began invoking a spell. At that point, the Iron Maiden manifested in the sky and embraced the shield confinement, sealing its gates on it. As it disappeared, the creature began descending into the void, ultimately vanquished. With the creature defeated, Naofumi collapsed from fatigue, and Philo followed closely, wondering what just occurred. As the other champions grew envious of his triumph, Motoyasu swore to claim the advantage next round, but Philo appeared before him, calling him a bitter failure. As Naofumi sensed a cryptic aura around them, another Soul Eater materialized before them, and Ren remarked that this wasn't in the game, but as it growled for their flesh, a shower of radiant arrows rained down on it, eliminating it instantly. Just then, a woman descended before them, cleansing all remnants of the creature, and stated that Naofumi alone was worthy of the title. She introduced herself as Glass, and claimed that she was their adversary. Using his scan, Naofumi learned that she was a high-tier human, and thought they were likely incapable of triumphing against her in combat. However, the woman was enthusiastic for a showdown, and told him to deploy his servants into combat. Hearing her remarks, the other champions were infuriated, and Motoyasu told her that he would flatten her all over the ship. Immediately they encircled her and discharged another devastating combo that ought to have obliterated every inch of her body, but not a mark was left on her. She wondered if that was the extent of their strength. To demonstrate a power of her own, she unleashed a counterspell and blasted them away with a tremendous gust, leaving Naofumi as the final warrior standing, with the others stunned by her might. Naofumi chose to consume a soul-calming elixir that would restore his SP. Instantly, he trapped her inside a shield prison, but she shattered it effortlessly, and swiftly deflected Raphtalia's strike before tossing Philo aside. As she cast a breeze, Naofumi managed to shield Raphtalia, and serpents emerged to bind her. At Naofumi's order, Philo assaulted her with unyielding aggression, but she simply hurled her away. Just then, Raphtalia attempted to finish her, but she blocked and shattered her blade immediately. As she readied a fresh assault, Naofumi summoned Raphtalia and Philo to his side and activated a shield confinement to guard them, barely surviving the barrage of her attacks, yet fainted after it concluded. With Naofumi still upright, the woman told him that she was impressed by his resilience, and questioned when he intended to unleash his Fury Shield. So, with Raphtalia backing him, Naofumi chose to call forth the Dark Strength, imbuing Philo with the same fury. Immediately, she began charging at the enemy, aiming with a kick, but she caught her and threw her aside like a useless trash before blowing her away like a stuffed animal. Naofumi tried running closer, but she cast a wind to stop him before igniting in flames. In an instant, she put out the fire, telling him that his flame was too cold. For her to show more of her powers, she launched a shell cracker that penetrated his shield and destroyed his armor. Even so, he continued to stand, and she thought that he was truly deserving of being called the Shield Hero, and asked him to unleash his full power. Hoping to live up to the challenge, Naofumi bound her in a shield prison and summoned the Iron Maiden, trapping her inside and shutting up the cell for good. However, she destroyed it in an instant and descended back on the ship. Just then, the ship rocked, and she realized that the wave was about to vanish. Deciding to get rid of them for good, she told them that killing them was the only way to win the war. As she prepared to launch one final attack, Raphtalia cast a powerful light to blind her vision, allowing them to utilize the distraction and escape on Philo. However, just as they were hurrying farther away from the ship, light arrows began raining on them. As Naofumi cast an air shield to block the rest of them, from the ship, the lady launched a glowing light sword, but Naofumi managed to shield it and parried it towards the mountains. Realizing she could not defeat them, the lady promised to annihilate them all next time. At that moment, she ascended into the portal and vanished instantly. Before long, the waves disappeared, and the ghost ship crashed on the mountain, but Raphtalia wondered if the village managed to survive. Later that day, after returning to the village, Naofumi remembered that a countdown had appeared on the system before the end of the waves, and began to wonder why the waves even exist in the first place, knowing for sure that they must grow stronger before the next one to save them from an instant Isekai. With the Soul Leader's skill now included in his shield, Naofumi wondered how he could upgrade Raphtalia and Philo to a higher class. At that moment, two knights appeared before him, telling him that the king was commanding to see him at the castle. Inside the castle, the king began telling him that he had seen the entire fight in his crystal ball, and thought he deserves a little recognition. But Naofumi was disappointed at his words, remembering he was practically begged to show up in this hellhole. The king told him that he was too powerful for his own good, and demanded to know how he became so strong. Sick of his shit, Naofumi told him to kneel before him and ask like a good servant, but the king grew angry and ordered his knights to surround him. So Naofumi told them that he would destroy them like worthless garbage, since their faces were worse than trash anyway. As he began to leave, the king threatened to eliminate Raphtalia and Philo, saying that he would make them pay for his sins. But Naofumi became very angry and threatened to destroy him if he ever did so, and finally left. As he started leaving the castle, he came across a lady who told him that he was becoming a reckoning force and warned him to be cautious of new enemies. That evening, after Naofumi arrived at the smith's shop, the smith wondered how they intend to upgrade their class. Revealing a map, he showed them a new city, saying that it was the best place to go for their upgrade. As he tried heading off to load their wagon, Naofumi told him that he wants a new sword for Raphtalia, but she lied that she had a spare sword, hoping to save some money for their long trip. Just as they began riding off, Naofumi discovered a letter from the smith, telling him that he had loaded their wagon with enough food to last them for weeks, and added a shield accessory for his upgrade, along with a sword for Raphtalia. On top of that, he added an invisible sword that would be useful in fighting unseen enemies, and special overpowered gloves that could push anything, even the carriage. While resting for the day, they discovered Melty approaching them, and Naofumi wondered how the hell she found them. Philo tried telling him that Melty was a good person, unlike the rest of the royal family, but Naofumi couldn't possibly care less. Just then, Melty told him to return to the castle immediately to see the king, but Naofumi refused instantly. Looking to try a different approach, she told him to apologize to the king and make peace before he loses the rest of his earnings. But Naofumi told her that he would rather vomit his gut. He said that he was doing their world a favor by trying to fend off the waves. But she soon began screaming at him, wondering why he just couldn't get along with her father, and told him to make peace before the king got into trouble with the queen. As Naofumi looked at her security, he thought they looked exactly the same way they appeared on the day he was set up in the castle. At that moment, a soldier began charging to slay her, but he managed to protect her and shoved him away. So all Leaf Village ninjas. That is it for today. Recap, do not forget to join our clan, our army, my friend. You can do that by clicking that red button below the video, destroy it for me with that bell. To follow us on YouTube with many videos to come in the following days. So see you later, bro. Peace out.